On day 2 of the FIDE Candidates tournament in Toronto, Canada, some absolute dramatic things were happening. In this video, I'm going to show you the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Vidit. In this game, some absolutely bizarre things are happening which you normally don't get to see at the very highest level. The game only lasts 29 moves. Some bizarre things are happening, so you don't want to miss it. This is your channel to follow the highlights of the FIDE Candidates tournament. I'll cover many more interesting games also from round 2 in a separate video, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. But first things first, you want to see what happened in the game between Hikaru and Vidit. So here we go. Hikaru starts the game with the move 1e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, the Berlin defense. You think it's going to be a boring game? Don't go away. This is what you want to see. d3. To keep some play in the position, protecting the pawn, bishop c5, c3, both sides are castling, and Vidit plays here the move d6. So now there are different ways of developing here, and I'm not going to discuss all of them. It's a very well-known theoretical position, and Hikaru decides here to play the move h3. Very interesting moment, looks like a very useful move, and it cannot be a real weakening of White's king side, but look what happens here. Black played here the move knight e7, very important positional idea in a lot of Ruy Lopez structures. The knight is heading for the king side. It wants to be on g6, and who knows, it can join the attack later on the king side, and Black is also preparing the move c6. But the main drawback of this move is that White can now strike in the center. With the move d4, it hits the bishop on c5 as well as the pawn on e5. Now Black has different options. If you do take on d4, then you give up the control in the center, and this is looking absolutely great for White. So Black is not advised to play that move. What should Black do instead? Well, by far the most common move here is to drop back with the bishop to b6, and this is a very important theoretical line. Has been seen in a number of games, even Magnus Carlsen played this with the white pieces. Most cases White plays here the move rook e1 to protect the pawn on e4, because after d takes e5, knight takes e4, looks like Black is very active and absolutely alright. But big moment on move 8 as Vidit launches a new idea, new move on move 8 in the position, which has been played more than 200 times in the online database, apparently. Here, look at this, c6, counterattacking the bishop on b5. And the first thing which crossed my mind is what happens if you take the bishop on c5. Well, this was not played in the game, but it's a very interesting and important idea for Black. You take on b5, now you can win the pawn on d6 and hit the knight on e7. You're even intending to take next on e5, but after knight g6, Black is okay. The idea is that you're a pawn down, but very soon you get your bishop out to e6, and then you're going to play rook c8, rook c6, and try to win the pawn on d6. And this has never been seen before, so very important contribution to modern opening theory. Hikaru didn't fancy this option and decided here to drop back with the bishop to d3 to protect the pawn on e4. You're still threatening to take the bishop on c5. Look what happened. Bishop to b6, and here another very important moment, because there is this possibility once again to play a move like rook e1 and then play transposes to lines we can get from other variations as well. Black will follow up with a move like knight g6. A lot of maneuvering will happen, but Black is probably okay. Hikaru instead decides to take the pawn on e5, and that is a free pawn, because after d takes e5, knight takes e5, looks as if everything is very nicely protected here. But here the big point of Vidit's opening preparation, very deep opening preparation, as on move 11 he launches a bishop sacrifice. Look at this, bishop takes h3. What is going on here on these 64 squares? Bizarre idea. This must have come as a shock to Hikaru. If you do take this bishop, then the idea for Black is to play the move queen b8 to attack the knight on e5. Why do you go to b8 and not to c7? Well, if you do play here this move, bishop to f4, then you still have the option to play bishop c7, and you are regaining the piece on the next move as you hit the knight on e5. If the knight goes away, the bishop on f4 will be taken. The best idea here for white now would be to go away with the bishop to h2. Black takes on e5. Now, rather than swapping the dark squared bishops, you play here the move f4. And, well, white's king is wide open. On the other hand, white also does have the bishop pair. Open position, maybe queen can come to f3. It's far from clear. Anything can happen in this case. But I want to show you one other thing, is that after capturing this bishop on h3, queen b8, instead of bishop f4, it's very important to realize that white cannot just move the knight away here. If you do so, it's queen g3 check. Look at this, the pawn on f2 is pinned, therefore the queen can't be captured. King h1, you take on h3, and white's position is falling apart. If you go king g1, there's knight g4, and this knight is tied down to the protection of the h2 square, otherwise you get checkmated. Other ideas include to bring the other knight via g6 to h4. This is just looking awful for white. If you instead of king g1 play knight h2, it's rook a8, and the bishop is in trouble. If you block the third rank so that the queen doesn't hit the bishop on d3, there's knight h5 and threatening mate on g3, because this dark square diagonal is open. Black is completely winning here. So Hikaru, in shock, he trusted his opponent, believed that he could not capture this bishop, but we know that it's possible. He could have done it. He should maybe have done it even. He played instead knight to c4. So he wants to eliminate that powerful bishop on b6. But first, also the bishop on h3 is hanging, so black moves the bishop away to g4, hits the queen. Queen goes to c2, and now black preserves the bishop by dropping back to the b8 h2 diagonal. Beautiful diagonal for this bishop. And, well, here white understands that if you play in a slow way, the knight will come to g6. Maybe you play b5 at some point to kick the knight away, to gain access to the d6 square for the queen. In any case, black is trying to build up a powerful attack on the king side. e5 played in the game to close this diagonal, to attack the knight on f6. And there are various options. You can move the knight to an active square like d5. It's very interesting. Vidit instead played the move knight to d7 to attack the pawn on e5. Now, the pawn on h7 can be captured. So white is now a pawn up. But there are also ideas for black, of course, to regain the pawn on e5. And of course, don't forget that black is also threatening to play here the move g6, when the bishop on h7 will be trapped. Now, white realized that the bishop is in trouble, dropped back with the bishop to d3, but that enables black to seize the initiative. What maybe should have been played is a move like queen e4 to counterattack the bishop on g4. But there's this powerful move f5 to attack the queen, defend the bishop, and also threaten to take the bishop on h7. If you do capture the pawn en passant, then black recaptures with the knight, hits the queen, defends the bishop, and also the bishop on h7 will be gone very soon. The idea of this move queen e4 is that after f5 you can sacrifice this piece. Bishop takes f5. So you're attacking the bishop on g4, bishop takes there, queen to h4, and if you go king g8, you have bishop to g5 to attack the knight on e7, rook f7, maybe knight to d6. With a lot of tactical play here, you're attacking the rook. If you do take on d6, pawn takes d6, well, things are looking great for white all of a sudden. But instead, black can go here for knight takes e5, and everything is apparently okay. It's a very tricky position still. We should not cover it in depth. Well, let me show you one more line. If you take on e7, maybe rook takes e7. Now the knight can take on f5, and if you move the rook away, the queens will be swapped. And all of a sudden, white is a pawn up, but black has tremendous piece activity, and white is underdeveloped. These pieces on the queen side are still out of play, and there are ideas for the knight to come in to d3. The bishop can come back to b6, so black is having a great time here. But let's get back to the game. When you're under pressure, it's of course very difficult to decide to sacrifice a piece, and therefore it's understandable that Hikaru went here for the move bishop d3. But now another very interesting moment, as there followed very cool move b5 to attack the knight on c4. Now, after the knight goes away to e3, for instance, Then it's knight takes e5. Black wins the pawn back and also defends the bishop on g4. Now, if white would capture on g4, there is knight takes g4, and things are looking incredibly dangerous for white, because the queen can come in to d6 to form a tandem with the bishop on c7, threatening mate on h2. Okay, maybe g3 is still okay. You can close this diagonal. And now after queen d5, when the idea is to swing over with your queen to h5 to renew the mating threat on h2, there's bishop e2, and white is in time to trade off that annoying knight on g4. But still, black is having great time here. Plans like f5, f4, the other rook can come in. Black is in great shape. So let's get back here. Once again, Hikaru under tremendous pressure. Play the move, bishop e2. He's hoping that bishops are coming off the board, and then all of a sudden the queen comes over to the h-file to attack that king on h8. But Vidit is playing very energetically, seizes the momentum with his move f5. Brilliant idea. So he is actually hoping that white is going to capture on g4 somehow, because after f takes g4, this pawn is really a nuisance, and it opens up the f-file for the rook. If there's something like bishop g5, once again, queen d6 can be played, and now no time to trade off more pieces, because knight will come into f3 with check. G takes f3, queen h2 is checkmate. This is one of the key ideas for black. You may instead consider taking with the bishop, but there is always similar play with queen d6 and mating threats against the white king. So therefore Hikaru went for the move f4 to attack the knight, close this diagonal, and well, looks like he's holding on, at least for the moment. But look at this. Very instructive moment, guys. This is how you play for the initiative. You ignore your opponent's intentions. And Vidit play the move bishop b6. The bishop has now a new diagonal to target the king. The knight on e3 is pinned. And if you do take on e5, well, there is knight d5 attacking that pinned piece. If you protect it one more time with queen d3, well, there's queen g5. And now there's no convenient way defending the knight even further. f4 can come very soon. Black has a crushing attack here. Instead of taking on e5, Hikaru played here the move king f2, defending the knight one more time, but knight e5 comes anyway. No need to move the knight from e5 yet. And look at this. This is a powerful duo. Knight on e3 cannot move. Rook h1 played. That was the idea, to make some space for the rook to come over to the h-file. It's check. King has only one move, king g8. Now, also there are ideas to take on f4. White totally underdeveloped. His king is not safe at all. Decided here to take on e5. But here again, same idea. Queen g5. Attacking the knight one more time. And you see that also f4 is another way to increase the pressure on that knight, with ideas to open up the f-file. So Hikaru went away with the king to e1. He's already in big time trouble on move 23. But that's not the only problem. The main problem is his position. After bishop takes e3, black wins back the invested material. Bishop takes g4 plate. Now a lot of pieces are hanging, but for sure black should not now be tempted to take with the f-pawn to open up the file for the rook, because then the queen will come in, and white is trying to survive this. But much stronger and simpler is to take with the queen on g4. Now black is having a lot of fun here. The rook can come to e8 with ideas to take on e5, for instance, when the e-file will be opened. So white takes on e3, knight takes e3, attacking the queen. The queen goes to e2, offers the exchange of queens. And now black has a lot of possibilities here, including just to take on e2 and say, I'm going to take the pawn on g2. That's option number one. Option number two is to play knight c2, winning the rook in the corner. But when you have such a position with a beautiful knight on e3, the octopus, the king is stuck in the center, you don't really want to exchange queens. Queen g3 is a much better move. Check, and there are still ideas to go knight c2 if you, for instance, play something like king, queen f2. You may consider here knight c2 anyway, and this is a much better version. There are also other moves like taking on e5. Everything is winning, but Hikaru tried to run away with the king. King d2, rook a8, check. bringing the final piece to the party, king c1. And now, beautiful move, queen g5, setting up a new battery with the queen and the knight. The king can't move away. If you block here with a move knight to d2, there is knight c4. The knight on d2 is pinned. After rook to d1, there's this thematical tactical idea to take once on d2. Now the rook should recapture, and on the next move there is rook to d8, and whatever happens, you're going to take on d2 next, and black will be a piece up. So that also doesn't work for white. Instead, b3 is played with the idea to run away with the king to b2. But white even doesn't get a serious chance, because they're followed knight f1, discover check. Now white resigned in view of king b2, and there is knight g3. With a knight fork, you're winning the exchange, but more importantly, the attack still going on. All black's pieces are totally superior to white's pieces. So that means Vidit starts this tournament with 1.5 out of 2 of his first 2 black games. Very impressive the way he totally demolished Hikaru Nakamura, a very impressive style. And that means that Hikaru, after an unbeaten streak of 47 games, he loses game 48 in round 2 of the candidates. And that comes as a huge blow. Not only the fact that he lost this game, but his opening preparation was really, really poor. He may have tried to play it safer after Vidit introduced that interesting novelty. But okay, also some praise to him that Hikaru played ambitiously. That's why we got to see this very exciting game. But definitely Hikaru cannot be satisfied with this game in round 2 of the candidates. Let me know in the comments what do you think of this game, and stay tuned because many more videos are coming in. More games from round 2 are going to be analyzed as well. So please subscribe to the channel and follow the most important tournament of the year on Robert Riss Chess. Thanks for doing that. See you soon. Bye bye.